This could have passed for a tropical summer day, but the reason it doesn't is simply that there are no humans around me. It's damp, despite the heat. It is a strange world I stand in. Where I stand may once have been a brilliant tree-lined boulevard right underneath the blue. But when I look up, oddly enough, there is no blue. The place seems airy enough, but I'm still asphyxiating. It seems that where I stand might once have been a brilliant tree-lined boulevard right underneath the blue. But oddly enough, when I look up, there is no blue. There is just a brown, marshy, high ceiling cutting off any source of sunlight to this odd world. The city sprawling on either sides is dead. Not a single sound breaks the eerie silence which surrounds me. Even though I can't think why, I start walking straight into the darkness before me. I reach, upon walking a few meters, what looks like a crossroad straight out of an Indian village. But what tells me that this is not from an Indian village is that something like a moat surrounds the raised platform, which I shudder to see has live snakes in it. What could be the thing which could be on this raised platform? Why is he being protected by live snakes? Or prevented from escape by live snakes? I bring myself to look up on the upraised platform and am greeted by the worst sight of my life. A creature in a very, very poor state lies on the platform on a sleek and slimy blade. His tattered t-shirt showcases his ribs and he is bleeding profusely. With great difficulty, I bring myself to meet his eyes and ask him just two questions. Who are you? And who did this to you? He looks at me with a gaze piercing right through the back of my head and speaks in a voice which would cut through stone and says, funny you should dare ask who did this to me, kiddo, even though you yourself are part of the race which did this to me. Still don't get it? I am patience. What happens next is that the world vanishes in a blur, the sky disappears, and the ground swallows me whole. The next thing I realize is that this was a dream. Whew, this wasn't real. But wait, was it really not real? For I had just seen the death of patience. If you look up the word patience in a dictionary, it says the capacity to accept or tolerate delay or sufferings without becoming annoyed or anxious. And as per etymonline.com, the word originated somewhere around 1200 AD, which makes it a part of our vocabulary for almost 800 years, and the concept for much more than that. Well, there is no denying the vast amount of change which has taken place in our life, lifestyle, and the way we see life over the past few centuries, and particularly the past few decades. Unfortunately, however, though most of this change has been for the betterment of the world as a whole, one of these is eating us away from inside. In essence, this particular change is that we humans have gone from a species inclined always towards the greater good of the society and this world to a race where each and every individual places his incalculable list of desires, wants, and wishes before anyone else's thoughts or viewpoints. As a result, or rather, the entity I just talked about, patience, has started losing his dominance. He has started loosening his grip on mankind. He has started withering away, succumbing to the injuries each of our desires for our own greatness has inflicted on him. So, to talk about it, the dream I saw was not a dream. It was all in my head, but it was real. To avoid the euphemisms, the statement is simple, clear. Patience is dying. From once being considered a value essential to human life, without which humans would perish, patience has now gone to something which is thought of as the domain of only saints, sants, and Mahatmas. This is definitely not what I would call good. It is about time we realize that we need to rediscover patience. Instances of how not having patience can cost you can be found in everyone's life. How many times have you switched the line for the billing counter at the neighborhood supermarket only to switch over, reach the front of the other one, and then to be told, sorry, this one ain't working anymore, go back to the old one. And then you have to go through the pain of standing in the first billing line all over again. Phew, what patience can do is amazing, unlike the billing thing. From the greatest acts of greatness to those small feats which make you proud of yourself. Overall, you find that a simple act of impatience can create a vicious cycle, the impact of which can be quite lasting. And an example of recent times that clicks the moment we think of impatience is the case encountered all over the world in view of the lockdowns enforced for the COVID-19 pandemic's control. Whereas in certain countries, people were able to take action against the virus by what you would call not taking any action and being patient, other countries were simply not able to be patient, and their people led to themselves being the result of the lives of countless people who might have been great assets to the human race. The result? Great depletion of resources, great monetary losses, and towering economies reduced to piles of rubbles. And just like impatience can lead to a vicious cycle, patience can cause for a very virtuous cycle and can benefit the years for years to come. At the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, a Soviet submarine which was too deep below sea level to communicate with the surface came close to an American Navy vessel just off the coast of Cuba. The US Navy vessel, seeing something on its radar, tried to signal the Soviet submarine to come to the surface and to communicate. But things went awry. The signal from the Navy submarine was perceived wrongly by the officers on board the submarine, who thought that the war had begun on the surface. And the bad news? The submarine had nuclear torpedoes on board, and its crew were constantly pressurizing its leaders to fire on the US Navy vessel. So when it came to this, the final decision was to be taken by two leaders. And though some of the leaders impatiently gave into the prospect of something exciting happening after days of idleness, the other leader, whom history remembers even now as Vasily Arkhipov, refused, stating that it would be right to fire only if they were sure a war had begun, and that they should patiently wait for further instructions to reach them. And it was this very decision of patience which probably saved the world from World War III. If you ask psychologists across the world, excess knowledge and the I know it all, don't question me, that kind of feeling is the greatest reason for us not being ready to listen, understand, and absorb others' viewpoints, which is nothing else but our big bad villain, impatience. So, to talk of it, if life is a battlefield, then to lose patience is to lose the battle. So, I'm no mind reader, but one thing I can be sure of you all are thinking is okay, I understand impatience is important and all that, but how do we win over impatience? I'm impatient for this one answer. How do we win over impatience? To talk of it, I stumbled upon the answer when, while in school, I observed that a certain class had everyone on the top of their patience and other behavior as well. Let me show you. I just want all of you to go through a small exercise. Place your hands on your table or whatever you have in front of you and close your eyes gently. Imagine a statue of the Buddha placed right before you, and imagine your spirit fusing with the physical incarnation of your body. Imagine yourself looking up to all the happy memories you have had in the past and will have in the future. Imagine yourself having nothing in your mind except for a single spot called patience, and meditate. Okay, so when you open your eyes, which you can do now, how do you feel? I don't think I need to speak of it. If you have done this, you know how you feel. So, how did I come upon this? One day after Hindi period had begun as usual, and we had all greeted our teacher by standing up when she entered the class. She started talking about how we can keep this brain of ours, which has this strange tendency to make us mentally absent whenever it wishes to, under our control. Or, in other words, how we could win over this brain of ours with the weapon we call patience. The class and the teacher directed the discussion to how, ever since the Indus Valley civilization, ancient Indians had found a way to fuse their spirit with the physical world. I'm talking metaphorically, making the previous, that is, the spirit, more powerful than the latter in their environment and in the world around, basically making mind the master of the body. In the end, the teacher told us that henceforth, instead of standing to attention when the teacher arrives and departs, at the same time, we would simply meditate, conserve our energy, and summon the patience which lies within our brain from the depths. Because our teacher told us that patience is not lost. Patience is right here in the depths of our brain. All we need to do is to pull it out. And believe me, the very same students who would grow frustrated every time the teacher asked someone else and not them to explain the homework question now remained seated patiently and waited for their turn. The same class which would start talking collectively and loudly when the teacher started resolving one single student's doubt now patiently listened to what the teacher said to that student. The same students who cringed when the teacher announced that a certain topic would be repeated in the class were now very happy with it, reflected on the thought, and revised the topics well. I believe that the productivity of our class as a whole must have gone up by at least 40 to 50% just because of the patience we were exhibiting thanks to the meditation exercise. And yet, another question which arises on getting the previous answer is why the simple trick of placing our hands on our tables and concentrating on that one point in our mind, patience, is able to build up patience within the students for that particular period. I believe the answer is simple enough. Time. Today, we are so caught up in our fast moving world, stress, frustration, and superlative emphasis that we have forgotten to give time to our inner self and conscience. And when we do give time to our inner self, we allow ourselves to flow into a world which still upholds those values for which humanity stands and on humanity stands. Wrapping up, it cannot be denied that patience is presently on his deathbed. However, we can still revive patience from this fragile state into which we have pushed him, and we can bring him back as a hale and hearty part of our minds and souls. And the only booster shot which can help patients recover is a triple ingredient recipe to our brains. The BRN formula, the three parts of which I just spoke about. Believe, respect, and meditate. Ingredient one, belief. Our belief in patience and what he as an entity stands for. Ingredient two, learning to respect others and appreciate what the person before you has to say, however much you feel that he is incorrect or what he is speaking is simply wrong. And last but not the least, the most important of the three, meditate. The practice of calling upon patience in our brains by simply pausing to take a break and meditate, maybe once every day, maybe when you go to bed, maybe when you wake up, Maybe before you do something big. Maybe before you deliver your TED talk. Because, as Mahatma Gandhi said, if patience is worth anything, then it must endure to the end of time, and a living faith will last in the midst of the blackest storm. Thank you so very much.
You know,